As the gears and the belts of the mechanical conductor start, the instruments on stage begin playing themselves. A nearby gnomish man seems to be moved to tears as it seems that his invention is working. And that's when the notes start to turn sour and your characters become concerned. Hello, and welcome to Tuna's Tales. For Pondering Monsters this week, we'll be covering two creatures in one. These are the Clockwork Conductor and the Animated Quartet from Kobold Press's Tome of Beasts 3. This encounter will have some action, some mystery, and a deep-seated revenge plot. So, if you want to see if your party can carry a tune, then stick around as we look at this encounter. As our heroes enter the town square, they see a stage set up with some seating in front of it and instruments on it. As the heroes quickly find some seats of their own, they see a middle-aged gnomish man wheel out onto the stage a metal construct about the same size as himself. A hush falls over the crowd as this metal construct whirs to life and begins trying to conduct the musicianless instruments. The crowd gasps as the instruments respond and start to float off the ground while a gentle tune begins to emanate from them. The nearby gnomish man looks moved to tears as it appears that his creation is working. Several enjoyable minutes of expertly performed music goes by before one of the heroes notices that something's wrong. The instruments have begun to play out of tune while floating off the stage towards the crowd. As the metal conductor turns to follow his orchestra, it becomes clear that something has possessed the conductor and that the crowd is in danger. Our heroes leap into action, and when the dust settles, the bent and dented brass shapes of the once magical orchestra lay at their feet, while the clockwork conductor lay inactive on stage. The town guards move in to arrest the inventor for attacking citizens, but our heroes waste no time in asking them to hold off long enough to figure out what happened here.
I guess that means there's not going to be an encore?
Probably not.
Well, I've got some questions then.
Sure, ask away.
First question, what are these creatures?
Well, these are a clockwork conductor and an animated quartet. Both of them are constructs at CR 1/2 and CR 4 respectively, with one of them built and the other more magically enchanted.
So they were made by the gnome?
Partially. This gnome is an inventor, and he made the conductor and gave it control of the instruments. The intent here was to put on a little show to demonstrate to the public his newest invention.
Did he know the conductor would go crazy and attack people?
I would say that he did not.
Oh, so someone must have sabotaged his performance then.
Good guess, Red. Overall, this encounter is meant to be a mystery where a local inventor is framed for something he didn't do, specifically making the conductor attack the crowd.
So who sabotaged things?
When it comes to that, I think I'll be saving that one for the next video, since a proper mystery really needs its own breakdown separate from this one. Think of this encounter as the hook to that mystery.
I guess that means that the focus for this encounter is the combat, right?
Yes. In fact, the only thing these creatures have to do with the mystery aspect is that the conductor was tampered with.
But isn't the conductor a CR 1/2 creature?
Yeah, but is that a problem?
That seems really weak, and if the conductor is controlling the instruments, then won't combat end before it begins?
You make a good point there, actually. I guess that just means we need to get creative with the conductor.
How?
Well, if your concern is that the conductor will be defeated too quickly, then just make him invulnerable.
Then my party won't be able to defeat him at all. Plus, that seems like a cheap move.
You're not entirely wrong there, but there is a way to do this. Like I said, let's get creative and make this a puzzle combat.
What's that?
I've covered it in some of my older videos, but putting it simply, it's when you add some aspect to a combat that gives the party a way to make combat easier or gives them an alternate win condition if they can find it.
So, what's the puzzle in this combat?
I think it should be something sound-based, and I'll get to covering that in more detail in just a second here. But first, do you have any other questions for me?
One more, actually. You said if the party finds this puzzle solution, that combat might get easier. How can I help telegraph that?
That is a really good question. Doing the work of making a puzzle combat doesn't really matter if your party never sees that as an opportunity. What I tend to do in this case is to focus on how I describe things. For example, in this encounter, if someone attacks the conductor, I would describe the conductor as moving in perfect time with the music and that whatever they tried to do has no effect as he is too lost in the moment to really notice. That alone might not be enough, but feel free to add to or riff on that as needed.
All right. Thanks, Tuna.
No problem, Red. What do you say we look at how this is all supposed to work?
Sure.
This encounter starts off by having your party either get invited to or stumble across a concert being put on in a town square. There's an air of excitement as most of this event is shrouded in mystery. No one really knows who's performing or the reason for this gathering other than that the local inventor is showing off something new. When it's time for things to begin, you can describe someone wheeling out and activating the clockwork conductor. A hush falls over the crowd as a small gnomish man pushes a metal man about the same size as himself out onto the stage. He fiddles with something briefly before the metal man jolts to life with a whir of belts and a tick-tick-tick of gears. As the metal man raises his arms, the instruments float off of their stands, and it appears that the concert has begun. As the event starts, things go smoothly for the first few minutes. The music is flawless, the gnomish man seems overly emotional, and the crowd is impressed, all until the instruments and the conductor turn hostile. The music turns discordant and the townsfolk begin to cover their ears. The gnomish man looks concerned and confused as the conductor turns towards the crowd. With a flick of his conducting wand, the instruments fly towards the onlookers and begin to attack. The townsfolk scatter as you all leap into action against the instruments, but the discordant notes deafen you. It seems that the instruments are protecting the conductor in some fashion. Now we're into the combat of this encounter, but I want to take a minute to cover encounter difficulty with these creatures first. As I mentioned earlier, the Clockwork Conductor is a CR 1/2 creature, and the Animated Quartet is a CR 4 creature. Even for a 5th level party, these creatures aren't the biggest of challenges. If we use 2 quartets along with the conductor, then by the numbers, we have a hard encounter for a 5th level party of 5. If the conductor doesn't participate in combat, then 2 quartets alone are a medium encounter, and if we only use the conductor and 1 quartet, then we have an easy encounter. The conductor alone is at risk of being taken out in 1 round here. If that happens, then there's no one left to control the quartets and the encounter is over before it really has a chance to get started. This means we need to start with some shenanigans in order to keep the conductor safe long enough for this combat to be non-trivial, which makes this the perfect chance to use a puzzle combat. The puzzle in this one should be music or sound oriented, so let's say that the conductor is impervious to all damage and most effects while it can hear the music. This gives the party several options to solve the puzzle: destroy the instruments, get the conductor away from the music, or silence the instruments or deafen the conductor in some way. There may be more solutions, so be open to letting your players get creative, but the ones I listed cover a brute force approach, a divide and conquer approach, and a more intellect-based approach. If we look at the listed solutions one by one, we have destroy the instruments as the first option. As I said, this is a brute force approach and should be pretty straightforward. If the party focuses on the instruments, then before too long, they won't be able to play anymore. If they can't play, then the conductor can't hear any music, as well as not having anything to conduct, and has basically been rendered harmless. For the second option, we have get the conductor away from the music. This also shouldn't be too hard, given that the conductor is a small creature. Just use the normal rules for moving a creature. In 5e, that typically requires a grapple first and slows a character down to about half speed. Once the conductor is somewhere around 100 feet away from the instruments, then I'd say he's out of their range to hear them. And the final option I listed was to silence the instruments or prevent the conductor from hearing the music. In some ways, this is actually the easiest option to pull off, since there's magic that, if your party happens to have it, can end things in about a round. I'm talking, of course, about the silence spell. Even though these are constructs that are immune to being deafened, the silence spell does stop sound from being created, so the puzzle solution is still met. Additionally, there is also the option of Dispel Magic. The instruments have a feature called Anti-Magic Susceptibility, where if they're targeted by Dispel Magic, then they need to make a con save or fall unconscious for the next minute. Doing either of these 2 options will remove the conductor's invulnerability and allow the party to stop him proper. If that kind of magic isn't an option, though, then your party can still try things, they just need to get creative. Stuffing bedrolls or spare clothes into the instrument's horns should be enough to quiet things down here. Something like this can easily be done in place of a normal attack. Just have them roll to hit as usual, but apply a silence condition instead of doing damage. Of course, these creatures won't just sit idly around and let the party try to stop their performance. Look for ways that these creatures might try to foil the party's plans in the moment. Something like using some number of their attacks to free themselves of anything stuffed in them. As the discordant sounds of the orchestra fall silent, you can hear them being replaced by the clanking of metal armor as the town guard moves in to arrest the gnome on charges of hostility against the populace. Once combat is resolved, the little gnomish inventor looks like he's about to get arrested and charged with a crime that he very much did not commit. If your party doesn't leap to his defense, then you can have him call out to them in some fashion. The goal with this is to persuade them to help him prove his innocence, which is where the investigation portion of this encounter can begin. But that'll have to wait for another time, because if this combat is too easy, then everything's over before it begins, and as you know, the show must go on. So, let's take a little look at what we can do to make this a proper struggle for stronger parties. When it comes to combat, normally I'd say to add in more of the creature you're using. You can still do that here, but I'd caution against this more than usual, as the animated quartets actually have some pretty chunky abilities that may be hard to keep track of with too many of them around. If you want to make things harder, I'd recommend focusing on adjusting their stats. More health, more AC, higher 2-hit damage, etc. If you really want to add in more of them, then I'd suggest not going over more than 4 total, not counting the conductor. 4 quartets plus the conductor make for a medium encounter for a 10th level party, and if you adjust the stats, then that should take you the rest of the way for a 15th level party. Plus, the more creatures you add, the more the action economy will help to balance or increase the difficulty of things here. If your party takes the bait of something fishy happening with the inventor, then you can set up an investigation and start planning a mystery. Of course, I'll be covering this in the next video, but if you want to try getting started on your own, then I'd recommend checking out the Alexandrian's video on mysteries in RPGs. It's linked in the description, and having used his method in the past, I can say that it works really well. For now though, if you liked this encounter, then subscribing and leaving a like on the video would be really helpful. Do that thing with the bell as well if you want to get notified when the conclusion to this encounter goes up. Of course, if you have any questions about anything I presented here, then feel free to stop on by the comments down below. I wouldn't be surprised if I missed something that seems obvious to me, so I'd be happy to clear anything up. And if you want to pick up the stats for these creatures, you can find them both in the Tome of Beasts 3 by Kobold Press. Of course, hashtag not sponsored, I just like the synergy of these two creatures. With that, thanks for letting me talk at you all, and until next time, keep pondering.